everyone, this is Miss Afric here, and today we're going to be talking about solving right triangles. Alright, so the first question you might be asking is, what does that mean? Right? What does it mean to solve a triangle? Well, solving a triangle means you're trying to find all of the missing sides and all of the missing angles. So let's write that down. Alright, it means find all missing sides and angles. So in the problems that we do below, we're going to be giving you some of the pieces, but you're going to have to find what's missing. Alright, so anytime you see the directions say, solve the triangle, that means find whatever we didn't give you. So let's take a look at number 1. So number 1, we have triangle DEF, and it looks like they've given us a few pieces of information in this picture here. They told us that angle D is 37 degrees. They told us angle E, remember this box, that means it's a right angle, which means it's 90 degrees. And then they told us this side is 8. Alright? One thing that you should know about triangles is when we label the angles, DEF, we're also actually labeling the sides. Alright? Every side that's across from a given angle is the lowercase version of that letter. So for example, if this is angle E, this would be side E. And I wrote that weird. Let's try that again. There we go. And then over here, this side, since it's across from angle D, it would be side D. We just use lowercase letters. So this side that they gave us, since that's across from angle F, they really gave us side F. Alright, just so you can get used to the notation of triangles. So since they've given us angle D, angle E, and side F, it looks like there's just 3 other pieces of information we need. We need angle F, side E, and side D. Alright, so that's what we're going to be solving for in this first problem. Okay, solving for the angle is the easier part because they've already given us 2 of the angles. If you think back to what we've been doing in the last couple lessons, when we have 2 of something, either angles or sides, it makes it really easy to solve for the third one. If I have 2 angles and I need to solve for the third, we know that all the angles in a triangle equal 180. So, in order to solve for angle F, all I have to do is set it up as the whole thing is 180 degrees, so I just need to subtract the 2 angles that I was given. So subtract 37 degrees and subtract 90 degrees. That's going to give me my missing angle right here, angle F. Alright, so let's type that in the old calculator. Oops, there we go. 180 minus 37 minus 90. 53. So that means angle F is going to be 53 degrees. And see how the directions say round to the nearest tenth? That's only when there are actually decimals. Since we don't have decimals here, we can leave it as 53 degrees. But when we solve for the sides, we might have decimals. So remember, tenth, that's one number after the decimal. Just a quick reminder. Alright, now let's try solving for one of our sides. Okay, so I'm going to start with side E. Excuse me. Now, if we had 2 of these sides, remember back in the last lesson, if we have 2 sides, we can use Pythagorean Theorem to solve for the third. But unfortunately, in this problem, I only have 1 side. So in order to solve for the second side, I'm going to have to use that SOHCAHTOA trig stuff that we talked about in the last lesson. Alright, so to solve for side E, oops, let's try a different color just to highlight it. Alright, to solve for side E, what I'm going to do is set up a trig equation. Alright, in order to set up a trig equation, I want to remember my trig stuff that we learned, so I'm just going to write SOHCAHTOA real quick, just to remind myself what those 3 trig functions are and which sides they go with. Okay, so in order to set up a trig equation, the first thing I need to identify is something called a reference angle. That's the angle we use to label opposite, adjacent, and hypotenuse. Alright, we never want to use this as our reference angle. So anytime we give you an angle that's not the 90 degrees, like in this case, D is not 90 degrees, right, that's the angle you want to use as your reference angle. So I'm going to write that down. That's my reference angle. Since that's my reference angle, I can label the sides of my triangle. For example, this is my opposite side, this is my adjacent side, and this is my hypotenuse. So if I want to set up a trig equation then, the first thing I'm going to need to figure out is which one of these trig functions to use. And the way I figure that out is by looking at what sides I already know and what side I want to find. in this case, I already know side F, which is my adjacent side. And since I want to find side E first, just because I decided to find that one first, that means I want to find the hypotenuse. So if I want to set up a trig equation to solve for side E, I need a trig function that has the adjacent side and the opposite side. So that's A and H. So then we look over here and say, oh, A and H, well, that's cosine. So in order to set up my equation, I would say, well, the cosine of my angle, which is 37 degrees, has to equal adjacent, which is 8, divided by the hypotenuse, which is E. And there's my trig equation. Alright, and then all I have to do to solve for E is solve that equation, and there's one more piece to my triangle. So to solve this equation, remember, whenever we have a variable in the denominator, I'm going to multiply by that variable on both sides. And then I will have E times the cosine of 37 degrees equals 8. So to solve for E, all we have to do is divide by cosine of 37. Okay, and then I can type this straight into my calculator in order to find my answer. So it's going to be 8 divided by the cosine of 37. Close that parenthesis, press enter. See, now we've got these decimals. Alright, so remember we said round to the nearest tenth, so that's 1 after the decimal. So I'm going to round to that one. Look at the next number. It's a 1, which means I don't have to round up. So E is going to equal 10.0. So I'll write that up here now, 10.0. Alright, so it's not too bad. And now the last piece is to solve for side D, but since now I know two of my sides, I can just use Pythagorean Theorem. Alright, I know that F is equal to 8, and I know that E is equal to 10.0. That's what I just figured out. So to solve for side D, I'm going to use Pythagorean Theorem. So I've got a leg, which is 8 squared, plus, remember, D is another leg, so that's plus D squared, needs to equal my hypotenuse squared, which is the side that I just found. Alright, so in my calculator, we can use our calculator to help us out in case we don't know. 8 squared, 64. 10.0 squared is 100. So 64 plus D squared equals 100. Subtract 64. D squared equals 100 minus 64, which is 36. And then take the square root of both sides. So D is going to equal the square root of 36, which hopefully we know that's just 6. So D is equal to 6. And those are the three pieces of my triangle that I was missing. Now that I've found them, that means I'm done. Okay? Alright, let's try one more example together, and then I'll let you off on your own so that you can try it by yourself. Alright, example 2. Same general idea. We're given this angle up here, angle U, is 70 degrees. Angle F, since it has the box, is 90 degrees. And then the side across from angle F, so lowercase f, they gave us that, and that's 30. Alright, that means we need to find angle N. We need to find the side across from U, so I'll call that little u, and the side across from N, so little n. Alright, so those are the three things that we're going to be trying to solve for. Let's start with our missing angle. Alright, I know two of my angles, so to find the third, I'm going to subtract from 180. 180 degrees minus 70 degrees minus 90 degrees. Alright, we can type that in our calculator. 180 minus 70 minus 90. Boom. That's 20 degrees. So that's going to be angle N. One piece out of the way. Alright, the hardest part of these is always that first side because we can't use Pythagorean Theorem until we have two. Alright, so that first side, just remember you're setting up a trig equation. Alright, so I'm going to circle my reference angle, and then I'm going to label my triangle based on my reference angle. So the side opposite that is my opposite side. Adjacent side is the one next to it that's not the hypotenuse. And then our hypotenuse. So in this case, I'm going to solve for U first. That means that I want to know my opposite side, and I already know my hypotenuse. So the trig function that I'm going to want to use is the one that has opposite and hypotenuse. Well, SOHCAHTOA. Let's see, opposite and hypotenuse, looks like that sine. So I'm going to set up my equation. Sine of the angle, the reference angle, which is 70 degrees, equals opposite, so that's u, divided by hypotenuse, and that's 30. Solving this one is a little easier. I'm dividing by 30, so I just need to multiply both sides by 30. And then we can type that straight into our calculator. 30 times the sine of 70 degrees. 28 point, remember, round to the nearest tenth, but since that's a 9, I have to round it up, so it's 28.2. So there's u. Alright, last piece is side n. Once again, now I have two sides. I know u and I know f, so to solve for side n, I can use Pythagorean Theorem. So, let's see, I know one of my legs, that's 28.2, so that squared, plus my other leg, so that's n squared, equals my hypotenuse squared. Remember, this number over here always has to be the hypotenuse. Just a reminder. Alright, and then we can use our calculator to help us with this. 28.2 squared, 795.24, and 30 squared, 900. Subtract that number over to get n squared by itself. (900 minus 795.24). We get 104.76, and then we just take the square root of both sides. Now, since this is a triangle, we don't have to worry about plus or minus. We can just know that it's positive because we only have positive sides with our triangles. Alright, 10.2. So now my last side, n, is 10.2, and those three are my answers. Okay? So now you're going to go ahead and practice a little bit of this on your own on the next page. Remember that if you have any questions or anything that you need help with, just make sure you ask your teacher before you move on. Have a great day.